All right, we are recording. We are live. Uh,
Yay.
Yay. Welcome, welcome to our profound and earth-shattering podcast series that I'm developing for this new course called Neurodivergence, which is such a mouthful. Sometimes when I say neurodivergent or neurodivergence three times in a sentence, I start to get a little tangled. It's become this huge umbrella academic concept, but I was trying to make it a little more friendly. In class, we have some readings and some media that we're looking at and film and puppets. We're actually doing a puppet from Sesame Street who's an autistic
Oh,
puppet.
cool.
Yeah, she's a new puppet. I don't know anything about her. Her name is Julia, so we're going to meet Julia. But I thought this is a series called Neurodivergence and Conversation, and it's just talking to people like you who are either neurodivergent or work with neurodivergent people and kind of give a sort of a vibrant perspective in that way. So our special guest today is Ashlie Feldman. Could you just introduce yourself and your role sort of inside and even outside the classroom and how you think of yourself as an educator?
Yeah. So I work as a paraprofessional in my local school district. I have for a few years now. I also have gone to RCSJ for teaching, which I'm still in the middle of like going through currently. I do have my associates. So now I'm working towards my bachelor's to become a teacher. And I think that I want to be a special education teacher because I work with the special education students, and the past couple years I've learned quite a bit about, about them and about, the different diagnoses that they have. So I think that I would like fit really good in with that kind of, you know, I don't know what's the word, but like,
Yeah, so
kind
you're
of students.
Yeah, and so what I'm hearing is that this is a positive development, that working
Mhm.
in the classroom, this is like the opposite experience that I had when I tried to be a psychologist for 6 months. I was a psych major, and I did a crisis line for 6 months and realized that this was just
Oh, wow.
something I could
Yeah.
do. I just wound up sort of my life bled into the people I was working with, and I have no boundaries, and I knew that wasn't going to work. But for you, it's been sort of a journey into something you know
Mhm.
you want to do. Um, I assume you weren't sort of you didn't come out like out of Athena's head knowing that this is what you wanted to do. How did that journey unfold for you?
So growing up, like, I myself have like some like learning disabilities, because I had a brain surgery at 3 days old for a condition that I had called hydrocephalus. So that kind of also like put me through like, struggles like growing up in school and, learning. And so I didn't specifically think that I would be a teacher one day, because I never thought I would be like, capable myself of doing it, because there's so much that you have to do. You know that you have to like write some things and like, all these different things as a teacher should do or could do. Um, so I didn't think that was like my thing. Like I wanted to be like a music major or something like that because I love music. I love like, playing piano and singing all the time. It's what I do. But then around like fifth grade, I had a teacher. Um, Her name was Danielle Capolina. She was really great. She was like my favorite teacher. She actually was the reason why I wanted to be a teacher because her energy, like her vibe was just so like outgoing and energetic and, goofy. So she was really that like turning point where I wanted to be like, hey, I want to be this person's Miss Capolina.
Uh-huh. It sounds like it's you weren't thinking so much, I want to be her, that she's
Mhm.
getting so much out of it, but you wanted to bring her vibe in to the classroom.
Mhm.
You're really in it for the other people.
Right. Yes. Mhm.
And how does having had that experience, you can't possibly remember 3 days old, but it created some kind of tension with you in the classroom, some kind of struggles, and you called it learning disability, which is like a different kind of framework. So first of
Mhm.
all, what does that give you? as a vibe, your Miss, what's her name? Capolini?
Capellina, yeah.
Capolina. Um, how does that become Miss? I'm just going to call her Miss C because I'm going to screw it up. How does that become her for other people? And is there a difference in learning disability versus now what we're thinking of as neurodivergence?
hmm So I think, at least for me, like growing up, like you said, or like I said, with the hydrocephalus, which is the condition I have, and having that brain surgery at 3 days old, I think that like Miss Capolina was just that person to push you and to like, you know, make you like a better learner because like she always would help me understand more, and she would always like, take my time with me and, really help me to like get the things down, like especially for me like math was like my hardest subject in school, and it still is. I really dislike math so much. But so I think also that kind of helped me because, she took her time, like I said. She really like modified things, and like both of my teachers did, because in 5th grade I had growing up I had multiple teachers like in a few years, like so 5th grade I had two teachers, but like she was really the one that I like connected with because she's just so bubbly and funny, and you know.
Mhm.
So I really liked that vibe that she gave. So I was like, maybe one day I'll be her. Like I'll just be that bubbly person, the one that, she loves kids, she loves the kids that she's worked with. Um and like even now, like I still like keep in contact with her, and I always tell her like, you're the reason why I wanted to be a teacher. Yeah.
Did she make you like math? Or did she make you accept that math wasn't really the thing that you were going to seek out? Like, what I'm wondering is the best teacher the one who you said she takes time and she makes you understand things? Is she making you understand yourself? Is she making you understand how to accommodate for the classroom, for peers? Is it the knowledge or is it sort of the socialization? What can we piece it out a little bit?
Yeah. So I think, well, math I still never liked. Even like when she like helped me out, like took her time and all that, it was still not something that I was going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a mathematician one day, you know. So, but yeah, it just, I don't know, it just really helped me like going through school, like knowing that I had someone behind me who would always like, who showed me like that it's okay to be like, different, or, it's okay to not always understand things or understand them differently than like another person would, you know?
So
But
her approach was more of a neurodivergence approach,
yeah.
that this is
hmm
just a different way you process things. Can you
Right.
think of like a moment, a single time when her sort of coaching or her ability to translate for you did something for you, created a light bulb?
So there's not really like one specific memory from like 5th grade, but like what after 5th grade, she kind of stepped away from like teaching for a little while, and she became like one of those, I guess you would call those child study team people. And
Mhm.
she would, she would be, I think it was an LDTC or something like that. Um, but I remember when I was testing out from high school, there's like this whole end of the year thing that they do every year, just kind of see where you're at and stuff like that, like for IEP purposes or 504 purposes.
Mhm.
Um, and I walked in there, and then it was literally her. Like, she was the one giving me like that test out thing. So it like, knowing what I knew about her in like 5th grade, and like knowing how, she would always, help people and help her students like really understand and like make it fun for them to understand, that's what her thing was, like making things fun. um it really helped me to like realize that like she just had that heart. And even like now, like getting out of high school, it was like when I had that test, it was like, wow, she like is still here, even if it's in a different light for me, for me. Like she was, supportive and like throughout the test, it was some parts were like a little challenging for me, but she helped me keep going. Um, but yeah, she just gave that confidence to people, that they
But
didn't
yeah,
know they.
you're pointing out a major core theme of the literature we're reading is mentorship, finding that mentor who's not a parent, who's not always the teacher, often a liminal person, which I think is your position. You're sort of liminal.
Mhm.
You're both in the classroom, but you're
Yeah.
you're sort of you're helping some specific person all year, right? You're not floating
Mhm.
around.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So you really have a relationship with that person. So how do you see yourself being Miss C in the classroom for these people that you help? Are you a teacher? Are you a personality? Are you kind of trying to help them accept what they can and cannot do? Are you helping them get along with peers? Like, what does your day look like? How much percentage is maybe dealing with parents or behavior issues, or I don't
Mhm.
know if it's glue and scissor problems or those kinds of things, Tell me what an
Yeah.
average day looks like.
So, like with a one-to-ones, like specifically, you're assigned a child for like that whole year. So, and your role as a paraprofessional to like guide them and like, keep them on task and help them like when things are hard for them. Like just help them learn in general. So what I like to do sometimes is like, I'll sit and I'll play with them. Like I'll play with all the kids, like not just like my one-to-one, we all do in my classroom that I was in last year. Like we would all like, hang out with them, say hi to them, help them when we can. So it's just you just basically are there as like a guide, just help them navigate, the struggles that they're going through, or just help them get through the year. Because sometimes, we've had kids, because this last year that we just finished in June, I was in an MD classroom, so it's like multiple diagnoses.
Hmm.
um, so we could have like a range of like, kids with autism or, other diagnoses, which we have. So it was really tough to try to figure out like what would work best for them. But my thing, like going back to what I was saying earlier, I really like singing and just playing around. So like sometimes I would make up a song for something like if they had struggles with scissors, you know, I would be like singing a song about scissors or singing a song about writing your name. So I kind of try to make it fun,
Hmm.
just for them, even if they might not understand like now, maybe in the future, they'll be like, oh, wow, I had this teacher, whatever. You know what I
It
mean?
sounds like it's not just fun, it sounds like it's a different mode of learning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I always say, like, I teach the history of education, and I always say there's this dramatic difference between the kindergarten movement and what the kindergarten looks like, and then first grade, second grade, third grade.
Mm-hmm.
Kindergarten's over, right? Kindergarten is more about the theory is the environment is learning
Yes,
rich,
exactly.
and you just don't interfere with their learning. You just sort of let them learn. And then first grade is such a different model. It comes from a
Mm-hmm.
whole different history, which is much more individual accomplishment, much more sort of task oriented, not
Yes.
environment exploration,
Mm-hmm.
not like the sand table and the this and that. Um, so I guess what I'm wondering is if there's a grade that you prefer, but also what I'm hearing is you said you're helping them with their own struggles,
Mm-hmm.
not so much environmental accommodation or peer socialization,
Mm-hmm.
but it's almost like they have to learn what their struggles in particular are, and that's kind of what
Mm-hmm.
you're helping them learn.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, like I said, I also like I'm in kindergarten with them. Like I'm in kindergarten grade. So it's really for me, I've noticed that it's also really tough because again, like they're still learning, like they were just coming from preschool, which is all like play-based learning and they're not really like, structure oriented. So like getting them into that structure into kindergarten was really tough, especially because it's a new school, a new teacher, a new environment, So it's just the environment is more like, structured, like I mentioned, and it was very tough, but they're learning, we're learning, because especially like in the beginning of the year, it's always tough for the teachers and the students because they're learning the rules that they might not have had in preschool, and they're learning how to like start to write their names, start to write their numbers, those kind of things. So all this is just piling up, so that's also like causing them to like, I don't know, maybe like stress in their minds. Like even if we can't see it, we know that they're gonna struggle for a while. But
And how does that come out? Does it come out in social behaviors? Does it come out with them just sort of not following the routine? All the
yeah,
above?
yeah, pretty much all of the above because like yes, we've had kids with like autism. Yes, we have kids with like behavioral like issues. So it's really hard because sometimes, if we have a nonverbal autistic child, that's really hard because they're just they're expressing themselves through their body language. They're getting angry, throwing toys. Even kids with just behavioral issues is just like, throwing toys, yelling, screaming, kicking chairs, and all that. So it was really tough. But,
Well, I've always wondered if kindergarten and its sort of theory, because it's romantic theory, it
hmm
assumes that the individual just is a rational individual that goes around to the stations and learns. And I've always
hmm
wondered if that isn't a heteronormative sort of assumption of, neurotypical kind of behavior. But if an
yeah.
environment couldn't be completely overwhelming for somebody per se with autism or what have you, or
hmm
sensory kind of experiences, or it could be really hard to get somebody to stop playing with the sand or whatever if they have a sensory,
hmm
especially if they're sort of self-medicating. Um,
yeah.
yeah, so um, I guess what I'm wondering is what kinds of sort of neurotypical assumptions do you see in the classroom that you kind of have to you see it coming and you probably cringe because you know it's the kind of thing that a special needs child would have trouble with.
hmm
Something like that, or maybe it's like the time coming in from recess is always kind of stressful, or lunch transitions or whatever.
yeah.
And then if you have like a story of a time that you think you did really well helping with a child, and then a
Yeah.
story when you think, gosh, I did not handle that challenge properly, and here's what I should have done.
hmm Yeah, so it's very tough. Like transitions for like my kids, they're just it's rough. Some days are good transitions, some days are bad transitions. But one story that I kind of thought about was like I had a kid, well, I don't know. We'll call him like Jack or something. Um, but this was my first year ever being in a paraprofessional, ever being a paraprofessional or like being in an autism setting because my first year I was in an autism classroom. It was like self-contained, so we never like took them out into like a general ed classroom unless noted in their IEP. But we had a student, Jack. Um, he was very hard because he was never in school. He's never been in school before, like ever, wasn't in preschool. And he was also a non English speaking student.
Hmm.
So he couldn't really understand like what we were saying, I feel like, which also caused some like traction or, issues. But he would, when he got mad, he would just tear the room apart. He would, throw toys, throw chairs, spit on everything, scream at you. That was really tough, and it took a lot out of all of us, like all of the paras and the teacher that was in there. It just because we all had to act, like we all had to make sure the other kids were safe, but also like blocking him from like hurting those other kids. So that there was one time it was really bad. He like completely destroyed the room, like ripped up everything, threw toys, threw chairs, like I said. And we all just were like tired by the end of it. So I feel like, and sometimes too, like we didn't take the kids out right away. We just kind of like pushed them like to a different corner. Um, but like also because sometimes it would go away so quickly, like he would just have to like throw something and then like he'll be fine, or we'll just take him out and like go for a walk and like go de-escalate him like elsewhere, because it like I said, transitions were hard. So if like we had to take the students out of the room, sometimes they would freak out and they would cause more issues. So that was really challenging, and that like really took a lot out of us. So I feel like for that, I would probably I would probably say like for me personally, the transition trying to like get the students to calm down that weren't like near the kid that was having escalations issues.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so I've learned a lot that year because I've never been in an autism classroom before, and I've never worked as a one-to-one before. So I was learning a lot. So for me, I feel like maybe if I would have like read up on like what I could do to help, um, like when I can, because I know sometimes you have to be like certified.
Mhm.
I forget what that certification is, but you have to be able to like, hold them and like, make sure they're fine. So, um I feel like for me if I would have like read up on it more and read up on like before I even got into the classroom, I feel like I could have had more strategies to be able to assist than I did at that time. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I mean there's really nothing we can do most of the time, and there's like things we can do sometimes, so it's like really hard to, try to find that fine line. But
Right. Right.
yeah.
And it sounds like you wish you'd had some more strategies to deal with the nonverbal acting.
Mhm.
That's kind of a key element. Um,
Yeah.
is there a time that you felt you handled things really, really exceptionally?
Mhm. Yeah. So there was, I think it was this past year that I worked with a child in the multiple diagnoses classroom. My one-to-one child. Um he like he was another kid that was just would get mad, and he would like hit you and scratch you and spit at you. He would always say like, I spit you, Miss Nashley. He always called me Miss Nashley, like, because it's just so how they say it. But he would always be like, I spit you, Miss Nashley. I hit you, like when he was really mad at me, like even for like just mad in general, like he wasn't mad at me specifically. So I would be like, okay, that's fine. We can take a break. Always breaks. Always breaks are important. So that's kind of what I've learned, especially with the teacher that I was with. She like really helped me this year.
Hmm.
Uh, because I've never been in a MD classroom before either, so that was a new experience for me. So she'd always be like, sometimes you just got to walk away and come back later and just let them de-escalate on their own. As long as they're safe, as long as the other kids are safe, then it's fine. So
Hmm.
that's kind of what is like what I've done exceptionally. Like I felt that, I was able to, walk away and make sure that I was safe and I wasn't getting hit, kicked, or spit.
Yeah.
But
I find it interesting that he can articulate that at the same time he's doing unacceptable behavior. It seems like two
yeah.
different parts of the brain are talking and acting out. Um, Do you like so if you're dealing with um let's say Jack is autistic, right? Do you think of autism as part of Jack, an essential part of Jack that he needs to kind of integrate into himself? Is it a different part of him? Like, I
Mhm.
always use the Pixar film Inside Out as a model because I think it's so
Yeah.
brilliant in terms of these different emotions all cohabitating in this space. And I don't know if you saw the second one, but anxiety moved in.
Yes. Yes.
And one of my friends I'm interviewing who's ADHD, and she finds parenting as an ADHD person in particular challenging because she'll just forget what's
Yeah.
supposed to be happening and realize that maybe her child wasn't in the safest place when she started something else. So she's always saying it's such a challenge for her. Um, and I asked her, what would it look like if it came into Inside Out? What would your ADHD character look like? And she said it would be all colors, it would be tie-dye. It's like this crazy thing that she wishes she could put away sometimes, but it's
Mhm.
kind of something that interacts with the other characters in there, joy, sorrow. So, like, how do you think of this autism or ADHD or whatever you're working with? Is it sort of a character in the brain interacting with, or is it like more that person than the other things are? I don't know. How
Mhm.
would you visualize that?
I think I would visualize it like, like the character in the Inside Out movie, like another character that could be introduced, because yes, it's part of them, but it's not always them. You know what I mean? It's not always going to be their challenges. It's always going to be, it's always just going to be there. So, but it's always going to help them in many ways. Is so, that's kind of how I think of it. Like, if it were a color, I don't know what it would be like, but maybe I don't know, white, we'll say, because we don't really have white ones in there. But, you
Hmm.
know, but I don't think it really hinders them in any way. I mean, yes, like the learning, it would be different, but like I feel like once they really like get older and they can kind of navigate it themselves in a way, I feel like it would help them. So,
Reminding me of the book by the president of Kinko's. I don't know if Kinko's still exists, but it used to be like a copy and binding place. The president wrote a book. He was learning disabled, and the first words of the book are something like, "Life is hard." No, he said, "Life is easy. It's second grade that's hard." And he said, yeah. And he said, the reason second grade's hard is because you're not yet allowed to specialize. For example, you don't like math, but in second grade, you're not allowed to not like math. And when you're an adult, you can just do as little math as possible. Or you can
yeah.
get a device, you can get a calculator, or
Hmm.
I feel like my math skills have atrophied because I don't use them. You
Hmm.
know, I feel like they used to be in place, but now, like, I can't always remember a standard deviation curve and how to read charts and stuff. If you don't
Yeah.
use it, you kind of lose it. So,
Hmm.
but to you, it's not like the learning disability is more of them than any other thing in that room. There's joy, there's sorrow, then there's
Hmm.
autism sitting there. And it's not any more or less. But you also think it's a positive influence. So how does that work? Like, what might an autistic person see that a neurotypical person may not see? What's like a positive element?
So I feel like a positive element could be like, one day they grow up and they become like creative. I have a cousin actually who has autism. He has Asperger's. I know there's like a whole thing about it,
Yeah. The word
but
is like, yeah, it's like a Nazi or something.
yeah, you know, but growing up, like he, was very like socially awkward and you know, kept to himself all the time. He still does, but he's very, very smart.
Mm-hmm.
Like So like, he's very good at like math and reading and writing, all of that, Um, and he knows how to edit like videos like really good, and like he does like voiceovers and all this like creative outlets that he has just like, brought him out more because he was always like I wouldn't say sheltered, but like within himself he wouldn't like he'd just be too socially awkward and,
Hmm.
just keep to himself, like I said. But he was very smart. So, and, he went through college. He graduated college. I forget what he does. I think like something with video games or something like that. But like that seeing him like going through all that just is like, it doesn't hurt him. It just helps him because he thinks differently. He does things differently. And, that's okay.
Right. It's okay when you're an adult.
Right? Yeah, it's okay when you're an adult.
And it's your then you can find your spectrum superpower, right? That's like the
Right.
paradigm of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer or the Ugly Duckling is these stories are about how what's perceived as a difference when you're a child. No one wants you to join in their reindeer games, but
Yeah.
but when you're an adult, that becomes your special superpower, right? Only I can
Uh-huh.
guide Santa's sleigh, right? So there's all these stories, but I guess what's interesting about disabilities is there's kind of two different types of novels that are very prominent. There's, and same with a physical disability. There's your Victorian novel where they call it the cure myth, right? Where
Mhm.
you'll accommodate and you'll outgrow it. You'll outgrow your red-nosed reindeer-ishness. And then the other side is accepting who you are. I always say that's the kind of there's no place like home motif. So there's those two
Mhm.
narratives, especially in children's literature. You can be anything you want, even if you're a pig, you don't have to be dinner, or there's no place like home. So I guess which do you think is the predominant narrative? Your cousin is sort of the one side is, he is now guiding Rudolph's sleigh. Um,
Mhm.
the other side is sort of accepting no place like home, accepting your limitations, accepting that you're not going to be a math genius. Where do you think we are culturally as a predominant narrative, or maybe it's a little bit of both?
I think I think it'd be a little bit of both because, some kids, they grow up and, they can, I don't know, go into space. They once they put it to their mind into their minds, they're like, I'm gonna go into space. And I'm sure that's probably happened or it will happen in the future, you know. But also I guess it just depends because you have to, I feel like again it goes back to the environment. Like you have to be in the right environment to really like blossom, um, to like really get out of your shell and like understand yourself and your your disability or your learning disability or what have you. um but so I think it's just a little bit of both because like I said, you could grow up to be like a doctor, an astronaut, or you could grow up and you can struggle, which and struggling is okay too. You can there's always going to be struggle no matter what.
It does sound like you very much focus on the internal journey of the
Mhm.
person that you're assisting, which is interesting because then
Yeah.
you're not so much seeing yourself as a teacher's aide, so much as a sort of mentor or coach
Mhm.
role to that child. Is there you yourself had learning struggles? Does that
Yes.
make you more patient or less patient? There's a sense of like the medical school model, which is like, well,
Yeah.
I stayed up for 48 hours. You can too. Like, does it make you more sensitive or does it sometimes make you feel like, hey, I did it. We can do this.
I think I'm more sensitive because I know what they're going through. I know what they're going to end up going through, even if it might not be like the same journey that I went through. Um I think that, we're all different. We're all different. Um so, one student like might, like I said, grow up and go to college, get his doctorate or something, you know, and one might decide, like, hey, that's not for me, maybe I'll go find something I like to do and focus on that, you know. But I think
Mhm.
for me, it made me more patient, like I said, because I know what they're going through. I know that the struggles are going to be rough, and I know that it's okay to, not be perfect or normal, if you would call it that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But yeah.
Are there any characters, either in fiction or film or anywhere, that you feel are neurodivergent that you appreciate in media or pop culture? Or even if there's an influencer, if there's any important person out there. I know the last person I interviewed liked some of the characters on Steven Universe. She
Uh,
felt some of them were neurodivergent. Anything that comes to mind?
so something that comes to mind, actually, I've never thought about this like before until now. There was a show on Cartoon Network. I think it was called Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. And there was this boy, I forget his name because I haven't seen that show in forever, but I feel like the main character, he was the main character, and he had all these like imaginary friends, you know, and they like helped him go through things like during the episodes, and like, they were having fun and, learning lots of things, trying to figure out situations. So I feel like that character, probably could be, because,
Hmm.
some students might have imaginary friends that, that really understand them, and that's what that character has. They understand him, and they, you know guide him and like hang out with him. So
In a non-threatening way. In
yes.
my study of puppetry, I have found that puppets are very useful with special
Yeah.
needs kids. They're a very non-threatening way to communicate,
Hmm.
to sort of parse through issues, and also they're natural for song and performance. And
Hmm.
those things they're so useful because they separate the issue from the person in a
Hmm.
very disarming kind of way. So I guess I try not to have these be too long for the students. My idea is that they can listen to these things as they're walking around and fit it more into their
Hmm.
life. And then they
Yeah.
themselves will be doing podcasts in groups for the semester. So I was kind of giving them models. I think it's a better way than just writing papers for a class on
Yeah.
neurodivergence. I feel like I'm trying to have neurodivergent assessment techniques. What
Hmm.
do you think they should gain by studying sort of neurodivergence has become very big and broad,
Hmm.
it includes people with dyslexia, dysgraphia, Tourette syndrome,
Hmm.
as well as learning disabilities. I was kind of thinking that we tend to gear our discussions of neurodivergence toward young people, and we tend not to think about elderly so much, but it's possible that many of the stroke victims or dementia, these could also be considered starting to bleed into neurodivergence. There's a character on television named Monk I used to enjoy. He has OCD, and he was a detective, and there was a lot of focus on his sort of superpowers for who he is, but his limitation
Hmm.
physically. So I guess like what do you think, why do you think it's useful to study neurodivergence as opposed to ADHD and sort of what that looks like and spectrum and what that looks like?
Hmm.
And what do you think they should get out of a class like this? What would you hope they would leave with a new perspective?
So I think for the neurodivergence, I feel like if you learn more about it, like, because like you said, there's like a whole spectrum of them. Like, there's not just one specific to a person. But I think that if they learn about it and they understand it, they can go make friends with them. They can help them in any way that they can. Like, now that they understand what they're going through, they can kind of like modify um, how they approach them and how they talk to them, just to kind of make them feel like safe and appreciated and, not alone.
Yeah,
Um,
I was surprised that a couple people were still uncomfortable talking about it because I think of it as a celebratory move
yeah.
culturally that now we embrace sort of neurodiversity. Um, but have you experienced the contrary? Do you feel like there's still kind of microaggressions out there?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of like, backlash for some things, There's there's a girl with Tourette's. Her name is Balin. She's like this TV personality. She's on like TLC. Uh I love her. Like we all love her in my family. Like, we think she's great, yes, she's funny, but yes, it's, because of, some of the things that her Tourette's tics give her.
Hmm.
She says the randomest, wildest things, but, you know, she's still a person, you know. So it's just seeing a bunch of like online people hiding behind a screen and like making fun of her just to make fun of her, not because not, just because they like her or, they think she's funny. Even that, even sometimes you might think it's funny, but she might not, but
Right.
she really just documents her life and to, really raise awareness about it. So I feel like, the people that are like negating it, are just doing it just to do it, just to make her feel bad about what she's doing, even though she's doing something good by
You should,
helping like understand.
you should send me her channel information because
Yeah.
I do have the students have an open assignment where they get to review any neurodivergent character anywhere or
Hmm.
representation and then comment on it. So that would be really great. Um,
Yeah.
and I think I have another open assignment they have is they can review an assistive device, any kind of app or anything that helps, even smart pen, whatever they think helps.
Hmm.
So I did want to ask you quickly, are there any devices that you've seen actually useful in the classroom? Any, I guess yours are too young for apps per se, but any assistive calendars or what methods, anything?
So going back to nonverbal children, they use a device. It's called an AAC device. So it's basically their voice. They use it to communicate when they're nonverbal.
Oh,
Um, I actually a couple of years ago, I think it was my third year. No, second year. I don't remember, but um he actually lives down the street from me too. I found out he is nonverbal. He just uses sounds like to communicate, but he also uses the AAC device. And what he basically does is there's like these little icons, and you like click on the icons, and it's like I want whatever, or it just basically creates sentences for them so they can get what they want, because they can't use their actual voice to tell you. They use their device voice to tell you. And it kind of just helps them get express themselves. So
hmm. So
that's
that's
really,
actually a keeper. That's like
yeah,
a good one.
that's a good one. Yes.
Is it a computer keyboard where they're touching the?
So it depends. I know there's like a bunch of like different devices. Like I know for people who, can't move, they use like their eyesight to like, talk and like do the buttons. Um but it's basically like he has an iPad for it, and it's like basically an app, and then he just like taps on it. Like he can like there's like pictures um that really like, and it's icons that just help him like, oh, like I want, whatever. So yeah, it's just like a diagram of not like, but there's also like, a regular keyboard so he can type like
Mm-hmm.
when they get like more advanced with it. But he became really good with it. I was
That's interesting.
actually, what'd you say?
That's interesting.
Yeah, like I actually worked with his mom in ESY. Her and I like, kind of connected because we live so close, and because I worked with her child a couple years ago. Um, but she was showing me these videos. Like he was using it, and like he goes, "I want candy, please." And he just like types, taps on it, and it says it. And
Hmm.
it was just like, you know, he's 7 now, so he's, grown a lot more when he's using it, but that was like a really like pivotal moment for him. His mom
Yeah.
was so excited. I was so excited for him, because he's a really good kid too, you know. But
Does that have emotions as well? Like, can they use emotion?
yes. Yes, I know they do. I'm angry or I'm sad, Yeah,
Hmm.
but
That's really neat. So, and that might be one of those de-escalation techniques as well as
mhm.
introspection. It kind of does both things because it can give voice to what's frustrating. It can also de-escalate by slowing, taking a break. But
Yes.
it also just seems to encourage introspection. I feel this way. I want this.
Mhm.
That's really,
Right.
really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so cool.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to turn the recording off and then we can
Yes.
detox for a second.
Yeah.
Um, let's see, record, stop.